All right, welcome to the Explainer. There is a quote that goes, in 2017, a DAO was a theory. In 2021, it was a meme. In 2026, it's a balance sheet. Honestly, that hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures how this decentralized digital world has completely grown up. We are way past the catchy buzzwords and the hype cycles now. These organizations have morphed into a massive, undeniable financial reality. I mean, just to wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're dealing with today, think about the number 5 billion. $5 billion. That is the amount controlled by MakerDAO alone. That's a single decentralized entity issuing a stablecoin that's being used by millions of people all over the planet right now. So today, we are going to totally demystify decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. We're going to open up the hood and figure out exactly how the true giants in this space operate, look at why so many others just fail miserably, and most importantly, we'll walk through the exact step-by-step blueprint for building one that actually survives. Here is our game plan for today. Number 1, institutions, not shot groups. 2, Autopsy of the Giants. 3, the DAO graveyard. And 4, the survival playbook. Let's get right into it. Section 1, institutions, not chat groups. The reality of modern DAOs. Look, we really need to set the record straight on what these things actually are today, because they are absolutely not just glorified Discord servers for crypto enthusiasts anymore. Not even close. Today, a DAO is a full-blown institution. They hire people, they pay salaries, they get sued, and they literally set monetary policy. But the catch is, instead of relying on a CEO in a corner office or a traditional board of directors, they're running on tokens, public forums, and code. So fundamentally, a DAO is just an org chart. It just comes with completely different ways it can break. All right, Section 2, Autopsy of the Giants, MakerDAO versus Uniswap. This comparison is wild, and it brilliantly illustrates the massive contrast in how these ecosystems are run. Take MakerDAO, for example. They act a lot like the pragmatic central bank of DeFi. They're controlling that $5 billion we talked about, and they pull in $200 million in actual annual revenue. How? By taking decisive actions like going out and buying US Treasury bills. But then look at Uniswap DAO. They govern the biggest decentralized exchange in the world, sitting on a massive $3 billion treasury. But the revenue? It is literally zero. Why? Because their stakeholders are completely paralyzed. They've repeatedly failed to just turn on a simple fee switch that could be generating $500 million a year. So what's the deal? Why does one take action while the other is totally frozen? Well, Maker survives because they are willing to make the brutal financial choices. When a crisis hits, Maker's token holders act as the lender of last resort. They're essentially acting like bank equity. They'll literally dilute themselves to absorb bad debt just to keep the system alive. Uniswap, on the other hand, is suffering from a massive legal chill. The whole DAO is frozen by this deep-seated fear that the second they turn on fees and start making revenue, the SEC is going to swoop in and classify their tokens as securities. But wait, let's actually shatter that illusion of 100% decentralization for a second, because here is a major reality check. The top 50 token holders in MakerDAO control 60% of the voting power. And when we factor in that voter turnout is usually hovering around a measly 10 to 15%, what you really have is a plutocracy of about 20 paid delegates who are actually calling the shots. They literally had to centralize power just to keep the system reacting fast enough to survive, because it turns out pure utopian decentralization is just way too slow when you're managing a $5 billion balance sheet. Section 3, the DAO graveyard. Why 10,000 DAOs died? Because for every massive billion-dollar giant that somehow figures it out, there are literally thousands that just crash and burn. I mean, in 2022 alone, 80% of them died, wiped out. And it generally comes down to 5 fatal mistakes. Horrific treasury management, where they keep 100% of their funds in their own native token, completely pathetic voter turnout sitting at around 1%, getting crushed by the SEC legal hammer, totally catastrophic public social drama, and honestly, the saddest one of all, launching a DAO when you have absolutely no actual purpose for one. I want to zoom in on that voter turnout issue for a second. 5,000. That staggering number is the amount of literal zombie DAOs walking the internet right now. We're talking about organizations where voter apathy is so astronomically high that all their funds are just permanently locked. Like, one of the multisig signers leaves, and literally not a single person will show up to vote for a replacement. So the money is just stuck there forever. It's crazy. And then, oh man, then there's the drama. Seriously, Human politics kills way more DAOs than bad code ever will. Think about traditional Web 2 companies for a second. They have nasty internal conflicts all the time, right? But they fight in private. They keep all that dirty laundry safely hidden behind closed boardroom doors, and they usually survive it. But in a DAO, every single petty argument and power struggle happens on a public forum for the entire world to read. Someone grabs the popcorn, the community panics, the token price plummets 90%, and the whole organization just evaporates overnight. Section 4. The Survival Playbook. 5 Steps to Building a Lasting DAO. Okay, so how do we actually avoid all that mess? Well, if you read all the documentation out there, there are dozens of complicated rules. But we can boil the whole shebang down to 5 essential, highly actionable steps. You have got to define your purpose, lock down your legal standing in treasury, bootstrap your governance centrally, actually ship a working product, and actively dodge those fatal killers we just talked about. Let's break down the most crucial pieces of this playbook. Listen to me on step 2. It is absolutely non-negotiable. You must establish a legal entity, something like a Wyoming DAO LLC, which will run you about $5,000. Do not skip this. If you do, every single person holding your token carries absolute personal liability if things go south. Paying a few grand up front and hiring a decent lawyer for a few hours is drastically cheaper than trying to defend yourself against an SEC lawsuit that could ruin you both legally and financially. Just do it. Also, still on step 2, you've got to protect your money. To survive the #1 killer, which is death by a crashing native token, you have to diversify your treasury on day 1. You should immediately convert at least 50% of your funds into a stablecoin like USDC. That absolutely guarantees you have a 2-year operational runway, even if your own native token happens to crash by 90% tomorrow. Moving on to step 4, shipping the actual product. There is this huge misconception in the space that you need to launch the DAO on day 1. No way. That is totally backwards. The smart playbook, the one used by the platforms that actually survive, follows a very clear timeline. You build the product first, then you get users, then you generate real revenue, and then, maybe, in like month 18 or 24, you launch the DAO. Why? Because the DAO is inherently going to slow you down. You absolutely need to find product market fit before you add all of that bureaucracy. And when you finally are ready to launch, keep step 3 in mind, progressive decentralization. Dropping a governance token to 10,000 random people on day 1 is a guaranteed disaster. You have to bootstrap your governance centrally first. Start small, like a simple 5-person multi-sig wallet and a handful of paid delegates. Then, you very slowly hand over the keys and expand that voting power in year 2. Remember, even Coinbase took 5 years to decentralize. You definitely shouldn't expect to pull it off in 5 days. Which brings us full circle right back to step 1, defining your purpose. The golden rule of this whole space is this: if you have no money in, out, or to manage, don't DAO. Seriously. If your stated purpose is just good community vibes instead of managing actual protocol fees or a real treasury or grant program, your organization is doomed from the start. You need an actual, tangible thing to govern. All right, I'm going to leave you with this highly practical, maybe slightly provocative little test to run on your own project. Ask yourself right now, if you replaced your entire DAO structure with just a simple Google Doc and a basic multi-sig wallet, would your organization actually be worse off? If the answer is no, then honestly, stop right there. You really don't need a DAO. But if the answer is yes, if the complexity and the massive scale of what you are building truly demands decentralized governance and a resilient ironclad balance sheet, well, then you just might be ready to build the future of the internet.